Welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome. Welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness. This is part 2 of a video I was just doing and I got interrupted and I thought I wasn't recording. So I'm going to just keep going. And I'm not sure if I'm going to combine these or if I'm going to do them in 2 separate videos. So we'll got to see how this goes. And I lost a little bit of track of where I was going, but the video was a little bit about time. And I'm gonna when I get a chance, go back and explain a little bit more in depth about what the guides are talking about. But in the meantime, I just want to go into flow about it because essentially the guides are using a play on words and they're kind of explaining how this type of communication works. And so this is meant to be felt, not necessarily understood on a linear basis. And so we'll kind of go from here. Um, Essentially they were talking about trying to keep things simple before, but it's very quantum, and so it isn't exactly simple. And what I'm being guided to share is basically the more fluid we can be, the less time is going to have the same constraint on us as it did before. It's really hard for us to wrap our brains around because we're used to doing everything from what they call units, units of time, 1 hour to here, 1 hour to there. It takes this long to get there. But a lot of people have been noticing, like, I drove, it should have taken me an hour to get there, and it only took me a half hour. Or flying. A lot of people have noticed that the time doesn't work the same flying anymore. It used to be you would never get someplace early, and now the flights tend to get places early all of the time unless they're delayed and there's issues going on. But it tends to be, wow, we need more time. And then they say it's because of the jet stream or whatever it might be, but the guides are kind of using that as an example. Like that's kind of how time is operating now. Okay, let me just go back into flow. And while we are not here to necessarily only discuss time, we would like to draw your attention to how we stabilize. This was a play on words in the previous video or beginning of the video. Our structure of reality. How do we operate within this new structure of fluidity? How do we push play and come into a place where the game is played differently when we have been produced or producing? We have been produced into a particular concept about our reality, and that has been producing a particular outcome. I'm being shown a pipeline on a wave, and comes and they get shot out the end and they come through that portal, so to speak. We're using this visualization because as a pipeline closes out, the energy is then pushed out and the surfer is shot out, so to speak, riding this wave. And it's almost a little bit like that. Last time we referenced a portal, and we might call this a wave, a portal of energy that is essentially being enhanced in a deeper space of fluidity, and that's even a play on words, in which our reality flows differently. The waves that we are creating and co-creating together have a different flow. They have a different outcome, one might say. They are being pushed in a particular momentum. And the way in which we interact with this momentum, the way in which we interact in this velocitization, play on words, is directly enforcing, from one perspective, the outline or framework of our reality. And so as we are co-creating in a now more real-time structure, so before we were in a time structure that was more rigid, and now we're actually in real time. Like we're not just operating within units that we were given. Now we're creating those units, is what I'm hearing. We've always been creating those units, But because we had a perception about what those units look like and how they were organized, we created from that stipulation, plan words. But now new stipulations have been set. The corridors, which we are now accessing not only within the human brain, but also our galactic train, one might say, have changed how we play and how we co-create with reality. And so we will continue to talk about this in perhaps a more linear way, but in this particular presentation, we wish to play and stay fluid. And this is a perfect example of a future version of how communication is going to be expressed. And you may be listening going, I don't understand how this is a communication that I would ever express or that I would ever understand as it is expressed to me. It changes nothing for me. And that may be the case. Yet there will be many who ride this trail of energy in such a fluid way that they begin to interpret their reality in a much more organized, co-creative semblance of a version, play on words, of reality that has never been experienced before. I'm hearing the word trailblazers. They will operate within these units of a construct and they will utilize them and mold them to the best of their capabilities. And by allowing ourselves to be more open with our imagination, in our imaginations, with our co-creations, we are then adapting the mold, if you will, of reality, or reality is then molded around us. We might say you bend the rules. We might say that you bend space and time, or bend space time. Or it is time to bend the rules so that we can have a new relationship with space time. Or we might say that the time it takes to accomplish things is much faster as a matter of fact. Play on words. So the way in which matter is forming is happening faster because of the dimensional field that it is encapsulated or held or co-created within. And so this framework gives us a new structure that has never been played with in this particular way before. And so we are letting go of old synchronicities, one may say, and syncing up with new harmonizations and synchronizations, playing on words with Chronos, and adaptations that allow us to tune into more planetary positions, as an example. So our galactic system has also upgraded. And if the planets that have been formed in this blueprint or architecture that is the cosmos, and those planets have a direct impact on one another, for all is connected. If we now recognize that we have a bigger house in which we were born, so to speak, we begin to recognize more planetary positions that we now align with that are actually going to increase our adaptability, that are going to increase how it is that we adapt in this new golden age, in this new environment, in this new body, in this new body of energy, in this new wave form technology, in this new way that we are forming technology, in the time frame that it takes to form this technology, or the time frame it takes for this technology to inform us, as all within is without, all outside of us is really birthed from the inside, if you will. And so, because the cells inside the human body are exchanging, and I'm hearing like battery cells, and I'm hearing cellular mobilization, and then I'm seeing cell phones, and I'm seeing different cells that have memory components. So we might say that when we were born, we memorized things with a certain pattern, or we memorized certain patterns that created our reality, or how we recognized our reality. Well, if the patterns are changing and we could say even our memories are changing. It changes the patterns and the synchronization in which we sync up to communication, adaptation, time frame, technology, so on and so forth. I'm hearing the word rebate. That's a play on words. We then activate within us a new signature. And this new signature allows us to sign on to a new network, a new wave, a new bandwidth. And I'm hearing of counterintelligence. And this is a play on words too, because we would play with counting time. So we begin to count with more numbers at our disposal. We begin to take into account more things, more planets, more planetary rings, we could say, on the tree. We begin to tell time with more efficiency based on a new way of interweaving galactically and interweaving with reality. For just as the tree rings can tell time, or the rings on a tree can tell us the time that the tree has existed, we could go deeper into the structure of the tree and go into those rings to listen or to see or to read what each of those individual time rings can tell us, like the chapters in a book. This is how your DNA reads from one perspective, yet it is a quantum tree. Therefore, the rings that are held within, let us call the rings of the human being in the tree of life or the tree of the human, are actually changing in response to the human, to the wave patterns, to the creationary grids and architecture that the human blueprint is morphing from and into. And this is very difficult to understand from a linear point of view. But if we can recognize that everything we understood before was based on an old structure of certain quantum calculations based on an interpretation or mathematical computation plugged into an old computational system or computer, as an example, we now have upgraded, and that computer has changed its language. It has changed its subset of how it interprets language, and therefore we are interpreting it different as well. We must learn to read this in a different way. And as we read this, we change what it is that we are reading, because we now understand the growth rings. We now understand how, why, where, what, when, etc., because we understand or know more. We begin to interact with our environment from a deeper knowingness, and we get away from, let's say, certain stories or pointless words. I know somebody listening is like, oh, this is pretty pointless wording as well, but I promise there is a deeper structure. If you go back to my previous video or the beginning of this video, if I combine the two, they talk about this being like a shape that is being created, much like the shape that's behind me. And so we begin to see the patterns that were established in the old system, and we begin to lay over the new patterns, and we begin to chart new diagrams and new territory. As we begin to chart new territory, we can then advance into that territory that is previously uncharted. I'm hearing uncharted territory. And we begin to allow ourselves to guesstimate, plan words, how long it will take us to grow, expand, or morph into this new territory. We can make new calculations based on new standards. And while the old calculations or mathematical equations are not completely irrelevant, we do begin to recognize with our new senses, our new sensory organs, our new sensory adaptive understandings and frequencies, or adaptations to the new frequencies, and therefore better understandings of these new frequencies and what they mean, what they are telling us. We begin to organize based on the sounds and the frequencies that we are beginning to understand and co-interpret. Play on words. For as we each come together and share our interpretations of these diagrams, I'm hearing diatoms, molecules, molecular. I'm just seeing lots of pieces on the puzzle here. We're then able to create new statutes of limitations. And this is a play on words. I'm hearing statures, statures. And we begin to move past the old limiting construct or constructual ways of interpretation. And we become more multidimensional in our accessing these subdivisions, divisions, quandaries, calculations, and exponents. And this is all a play on words. Our understanding of even what these words mean and what we have access to changes. So everything moves up when the light is shown on that which has been hidden, that which has been perceived I'm seeing like people had seen it before, but they didn't understand it, so they ignored it. Perceived and not believed. And we step into a space of belief. We believe that the limitations have been uplifted, removed. And as we move past our own limiting beliefs, we can begin to organize with the organic, dimensional frequencies that all is birthing, and created through. As the dust settles, we can see the particulates, if you will, the solar realms become more visible, and these forces become more easily understood. And so we will talk again in this way about these energies so that we can play with the multidimensional facets of language, of visualizations, of organization of template structures around letters and geometry. And we begin to share this in this way so that we can recognize that all angles or language of sound and light and frequency codes or letters can be used in much more efficient ways than just point A to point B. I'm hearing ABBA, ABBA. So it becomes a back and forth beyond, I'm hearing numbers game, but it's bigger than that. I'm also seeing two sides of the coin. And we begin to associate, I'm seeing word association, codes. We begin to associate much more synchronicities, or we become associates of the synchronicities. We begin to recognize the lettering. Is it anagrams? Anagrams maybe. And we begin to see that all letters hold a geometry, a configuration of scales, a light encoded blueprint that is imprinted upon the DNA from one perspective. For if you look at what the DNA actually looks like, I'm hearing ribosomes, you begin to sound out the letters in accordance with their particular heritage, play on words, their particular lineage, play on words, the particular lines and points on a graph begin to chart themselves into this uncharted territory, but we are also engaging as that uncharted territory. This is all a play on words. We are the sound. We are the origination, the original blueprint. We are the mother and the father of all of this. Yet, coming back to the DNA, we begin to sense beyond that which has been talked about. We begin to open to our innate knowingness and move out of self-limitation and therefore self-doubt. We move out of talking ourselves out of certain realities because they are not fit to fit in to a particular paradigm or program that no longer fits with the fluidity, multidimensionality of the golden age. And so imagination is key. The more we imagine that which we cannot see, the more we utilize our senses to see, feel, interpret the reality that we think we cannot see, we begin to move out of the mode of thinking we cannot see. We begin to feel with a heightened sensitivity. And as we utilize these senses, we see with eyes to see, we hear with ears to hear, we feel and move beyond the fear of the unknown. And this allows us to track or to keep track of not only where we have grown, I'm hearing growth rings, but it allows us to tune into that which sings to our soul, that which we are moving toward. I'm hearing a sound bowl. And this allows us, like the music of the spheres, but I'm hearing literally a sound bowl. And we begin to hum. We begin to create a different wave, a different frequency, a different reality. And this structure then makes itself known. As it makes itself known, it imprints upon us its impression of us. All right, I have to end on that note because I gotta run. But having said that, lots of love, you guys. Have fun with that one. I don't know when I'm going to have a chance to go back and break this into a little bit more of a linear presentation, but that was fun for me. And it's also just recognizing if you made it this far, whoo, gold star for you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And also, this is an activating sequence of words. It's fire letters, it's language code activation. So just recognizing that and being playful with all of this, we're all co-creating in this new reality together in such a crazy way. And it's really exciting. So in love and light, guys, namaste.